Us now is author Daren Martin.
Culture is the game. If you don't change the culture, you don't change the company.
Great cultures over the course of 10 years will yield a 746% increase in your net profit.
Holy moly!
One person in the top 1% is worth 12 in the bottom 1%. Called the culture archetype for a reason.
We need to get into it.
Okay. Welcome to Company Culture with Daren Martin and the beautiful
Elise Martin.
So, Ziggy, what happened, dude? We were supposed to do a little show promo, what we were going to talk about, and you just like fired it off. It was just
I jumped the gun, guys. My bad.
No worries.
We're always happy to see Ziggy.
I was excited to talk about what we're talking about today.
So excited. So we are as well because, first of all, every single person, I would bet 99% of the people that are watching, listening, subscribing. By the way, thank everybody for just the total love you have given the show, and we're only getting started, so we really appreciate the support. But 99% of the people listening have one of each of these, and that is a first name and a last name. Now, you're like, okay, wait, this is a company culture show. Why in the world are we talking about names? We're going to get there, and the point where we're going to get is I'm going to talk about why companies also need a first name and a last name. But before we do that, just think about it on a personal level. So your name is
Elise.
Elise.
Yes.
And what does Elise mean?
Ambitious.
Ambitious.
It's also a derivative of Elizabeth, which means something related to God.
What does it mean related to God? Because
Like,
that could go
it could
so
be-
many different
I don't
ways.
know. It could be
like it could
child
be
of
it could be
God.
hater of God. It
No,
could
it's
be
something
lover
like
of
that.
God.
Believer, child of God, something like that. I don't know. All the Elizabeths know. I don't know. I'm an Elise, so.
Names very rarely mean something.
And it's not just that they
awful.
have multiple. So sometimes first names can have like. You choose the meaning you want, really. It's like some people say it means this, and some people say, but I chose. I read once that it meant ambitious, so I'm keeping it.
So my name, thanks to my parents, Daren, is actually a derivative of Darius. You have any idea what Darius means?
Ooh, it sounds very, very hot.
It means great one. Great one. You can't make this stuff up. That's what it means. Great one. And Martin, the last name that we both share, actually means warlike. Okay.
Ooh.
So, I mean, you can't get much stronger than that. So at any rate, when you think about first name, last name, first of all, if you're listening to the show, I talk to so many people and they'll tell me their name. And by the way, in the age of social media, the best gift you can give your kids is to name them something
Unique.
so
Right.
that they can own the social media, right? I was
Or
fortunate.
unique spelling, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So my parents spelled my name with one R instead of two R's. I've got some double R buddies, Daren Squires being one of those. And when Daren and I used to go out, he would tell people, when we were kids, you had to pay by the letter, and Daren's parents couldn't afford the extra R. So, like, really,
I
Squires.
love it. That's hilarious.
But the best gift you can give,
Children are so
and,
mean.
And by the way, I don't. I'm just throwing out all these little tidbits that are, I think, useful. But the best gift you can give your children is to give them a unique spelling or something, so that they can, represent themselves out there in the world.
The second best gift is to buy them the URL.
Right. So I think that's one of the best baby gifts you can give is to
It's
buy.
such a unique gift,
Hey, you're going
right?
to the baby shower and you say, if the baby's been born, they've got the name. Say, hey, listen, I did a little thing. I bought the name of your child for when they become famous, and now they're going to have their own .com. So at any rate, first names, last names represent very, very different things. Last name. Let's start with last name. So last name represents the tribe, the clan, the group, the thing that you're a part of, the bigger thing. So I'm a Martin. I grew up with three siblings and parents, and we actually grew up in Bangkok, Thailand. We have a lot of shared experiences. There are stories that I can tell that my siblings would all go, oh yeah, I remember that. My parents would go, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. Because we lived it together. So actually, my sister says one of the definitions of pathetic is that when we lived in Rayong, Thailand, of all places, we wanted to trick or treat. Our parents wanted to give us that little American experience. But if we showed up on someone's poor Thai person's, deal dressed in a sheet, they would be freaking out. They had no idea what trick-or-treating was and why are you dressed like this?
Well, I grew up in Saudi Arabia, and if we showed up on someone's doorstep dressed in trick-or-treating outfits, I think we might go to prison.
You might be arrested. Much worse. They would freak out in Thailand. You would go to prison in Saudi Arabia.
Celebrating the devil.
So what happened was we got all dressed up and we had 4 doors on this big house that we lived in, and we went to each door, and Dad and Mom ran back and forth and brought candy. Okay, so nuts, but shared stories. That's what happens with last names, that there's this connection, right? That you feel like you're a part of something. And that's the same thing we find with organizations like the Marines or the Masons or fraternities, sororities, all that stuff, which I've always, and I think I've talked about on the show, been a big advocate of companies acted more like that and built really that last name where people felt like they were a part of something.
And I have my own story like that. The most recent Southwest was the engine, something happened to the engine and it exploded. And there were 2 people on the plane that previously worked at D Magazine when I was there. And even though I haven't, messaged my contact list forever, which is so sad. I'm so sorry, everybody. I forgot. But when the accident happened, there was this sudden rush of, I need to reach out to everyone I know at D and see if they know anything. Is that guy okay? Does reach out to him? Are you okay? Can I help? Is there any way I can help? But it's like this, this sudden feeling of that's my clan, and I want to find out if how they're doing. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain.
There was a connectedness because the people that worked at D just had this shared experience, and that's the way it ought to be at a company. So there are strong last name companies that people love being a part of. The ones that immediately come to mind are the Googles, the Apples, the whatevers of the world, where people say, "Hey, I work for." We have a friend here locally that every time we go, you're in a meeting thing or whatever, and you go around, what do you do? Who are you? And she always goes, I work for the mouse. Of course, she's talking about that. Disney, right?
I love
because
Disney.
she's very proud of that. So she wears that as a badge of honor. There are other companies that will go unmentioned that it's not so much a badge of honor. It's like, I work for, right, and they mumble it because they know someone's going to go to task with them.
Or they avoid the question. Hi, what do you do? I just work for a law firm. Which one? Just one of those.
Most cable companies fall into that category. A lot of the phone companies, et cetera, just because they've got such a bad association around their brand. And so there's a strong last name, but it's not necessarily one that you want. So if you think down through history, if someone says, well, what's your last name? Well, Rockefeller. Then all of a sudden, bing, bells and whistles go off, and you go, whoa, you're a part of a legacy family. Now, they may be far removed, but it doesn't matter. I remember a buddy of mine, we were out hanging out. One night we were out having a good time, and he's dancing with this woman over there, and he comes over and he's like, dude, you were dancing with that woman for a long time. He's like, she's a Rockefeller. I'm like, okay. Well, what does that mean?
What if she was a cougar, like a Freddy Krueger?
Well, she might have been.
Like a Fanny Krueger.
Okay. I don't know where the name Fanny came up.
I was trying to find an F.
But there, names carry weight with them, and it represents something, and it is part of that whole. There are some really strong last name companies, but they don't have a good first name. So, by the way, great companies have a strong first name and a strong last name. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But if you think about IBM back years ago, that was part of their problem, was everybody marched around. They all did the same thing. They talked the same way. They did the, repeat sort of behaviors. And there was not individuality, ingenuity, all that stuff that really gets represented by first name.
So let me just get this. So what you're saying is that the individual and the whole are just as important as each other, right? The whole pie is just as important as the slice of pie. I know I have such bad examples.
No. But in an ideal world, and you're dead on.
Yeah.
There are families, and some of you maybe come from these, where this is who we are, and you're never to veer from that. So we are this, we do this. Right. I remember watching a movie, we watched on the plane, and it was about John Paul Getty, and it was about the kidnap of his grandson, whatever. So some point in the movie, he looks at his grandson before all the kidnapping and everything, and he says, "You're a Getty, and Gettys do X, Y, Z." Okay, so when you're a part of a really strong last name company, there's that sense of we are Netflix, we are whoever this is, and this is what we do. This is where
we are filmmakers,
right? And it's that whole writing for the brand type thing that you represent us. That's why companies have things like social media policies and all those things, because, whoa, if you say something that represents us. So I don't know if we've talked about this, but great, model. But if you're walking through the airport, someone's rude to you, say, "What a rude person." If you're on the plane and the flight attendant's rude to you, say, "What a rude airline."
Yeah.
And the same thing is true when people identify something with the last name. So you really need to pay attention of what that means. Do you have like a dysfunctional family last name? And by the way, there's a lot of dysfunctional families out there that are known as companies. And there's all this infighting, and there's this, there's a lack of unity. And you can see this in the sports world as well. Great sports teams have a strong last name. There's this individuality, but there's this separateness. So, you're not a big sports other than World Cup. But in 2004, the American Dream Team went off to the Olympics and came back with the bronze. Never happened before. America has always crushed it with the sport that was invented right here in America. We always win the gold medal. It's just a given, and sometimes by, huge numbers. But this team, and picture that LeBron James was on this team, Tim Duncan was on this team, Marion, boy, I'm blanking on his name.
Question, what sport was this?
Basketball.
Oh, okay.
The thing with the round ball, and you got to put it in the hoop.
Really bad at sports.
So they lost. Now, there are multiple reasons for that, but I have to think that at some point it's because their last name. They were superstars coming together, but they never really just gelled as a team, right? There was a lot of first-name players on the court, but if you don't pull together as a team, you're not going to make it.
That makes sense. Oh wait, I have my own example. We were just out in we were with a client, and we were doing this great training, and one of the participants in the session, she said that one of her personal mantras came from her family, where her dad used to say, "You're a so and so, dang it," right? Like you're a Martin, dang it. That was like their family mantra. So every time there was trouble, they would say, "You're a Martin, dang it." And every time there was something going wrong.
I think they said "damn it." I think we can say "damn it" on our own show.
Yeah, I'm trying to say it politely.
Okay, well, dang it, damn it. What's the difference? I remember it was so weird growing up that we were allowed to say one, weren't allowed to say the other. It's like, really? We're talking about 1 or 2 letter differences. It means the same thing. But, you're a Martin, damn it.
Yeah.
That was in such a strong legacy.
It was a great,
and she
powerful
talked
mantra.
about how many times that came up in her
sticks
brain.
in the back of her head, right? So a really powerful mantra with a last name, right? It helps you when you're like going through these like motions of, this horrible thing happened, but I'm a Martin, damn it.
So you translate that into companies then. When companies have that strong sense, we're American Airlines, damn it. This is what we do. This is who we are. That airline
outdid us this year, but we're American Airlines, damn it. We're taking them over. It reminds me of, what is it,
it
Nike?
Was Nike.
Yes.
In their early days, their motto was, do you remember?
Crush Adidas or Reebok?
It was, I think it was Adidas.
Crush Adidas, right? So that's like Dallas saying crush New York, because not that way.
Okay, so by the way, speaking of Nike, Adidas, and Reebok, little shout out to the great Gary Vaynerchuk, because he just launched his K-Swiss. Just to support Gary, I got to get some of his he's got a shoe named after him.
Really?
These K-Swiss. They got, I do?
Yeah, Doc Martens.
Wow. I did not even see that coming. But yeah, a little shout out to Gary Vaynerchuk with his new shoe launch.
Shout out to Doc
K-Swiss,
Martin for naming your shoe after my husband. Just saying.
Product placement. Boy, I wish we got paid for this. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Wish we will.
So at any rate, okay, great story about strong last names. So there was a little company back in 2000. They were in a race. They were in a race with a really big player. This other big player had a valuation of about $1 billion, and they were dominant. They were definitely dominant in the game. And what the race was to solve the issue of marketing online in a way that made sense. So when people would search phrases, right, you want to pull up an ad. So if you say tennis shoes, you want to pull up, here comes the K-Swiss, or here comes the Nike, or the whatever, right? So that you can start, connecting those dots. People go, it's like what Netflix does with if you like this movie, you may like that movie. The problem was it was a disaster. And people would put something in like Pampers and would pull up diapers instead of.
That sounds like when I get those dress emails when I'm a size 0 and they send me the double extra large.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, why you're just upsetting me right now. But so when people would put in Pampers, actually it wouldn't pull up diapers, it would pull up a spa, something like that. So at any rate, it's this company's in this race, and there was a very small company that was competing with the big dog. And they were not getting anywhere. In fact, so much so that the CEO printed some of the ads and how ridiculous they were. They searched this. We pulled up this ad, showed them this ad. And he went and posted them in the break room and said, these ads suck. Okay. Ooh. Now, this company had a strong last name in that they were all on one team together. They used to fight it out, but they loved each other. They were in there together. And so there was this guy that came in. His name is Jeff Dean, actually. He's drinking his cup of coffee end of the day. He sees these ads suck, and he decided, that's weird. Kind of reminds me of something I worked on a long time ago. So this is not in his area, right? But he goes and starts working on it, and he pushes his other work aside and starts working on it. Then he comes back late at night and works on it some more. And then one weekend, he's home. He's worked on a lot that week. He has dinner with his family on Sunday. Says, I'm going back after work. Goes back after work. 5 o'clock in the next morning on Monday, he has solved this thing or gotten it pretty far along. So he pushes it out there and goes home and goes to bed. Well, it ended up being the thing that was exactly what was needed. And we might not know the company Google, at least not as they're known today, if it weren't for Google AdWords, because that has funded 90+% of the company for a long, long time. I mean, they make $80 trillion a day on Google AdWords. That's an exaggeration. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big number. Yeah, that's a really big number.
But it could depend on the day, honestly. Yeah. But, go ahead.
No, please.
No. I was just.
You're getting distracted by Google AdWords. So here's the thing with Jeff Dean. So Jeff Dean, when they came later and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about that story. Remember the time when you solved it and the thing?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, the thing where you saved and, launched Google and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. They kept digging, and finally he went, oh, yeah, that little thing. He said that happened all the time around here. Now, that is a strong last name company where people, they're working, they're doing, but they just see it as part of their contribution to the whole. So last name, okay, first name. You want to talk about first name?
What about my first name? It's cute.
Your first name is adorable.
I think so.
And you were not named after Fleur de Lis?
I was not named after that. Or
what were you named after?
Or for Elise, or the car. Not named after the car. Yeah. I was named after the character in the movie Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve.
Awesome.
And her name was Elise McKenna.
That's very cool. Yeah. And it's a beautiful name. So I was named after Bobby Daren. Spelled differently, but when the night strikes back the night.
You were named after him. Oh my gosh, I'm learning something so interesting about you on here.
And it's actually the first time I say on the show. I'm sure it won't be the last unless we get too much hate mail. So at any rate, first name's a different deal.
Right.
Last name, Martin. And we're making our own Martin last name and what that means and how that represents.
And right now we have our shared stories and our things that make us and us, right?
Okay. So my siblings, we're all Martins. Mm-hmm. But my brother is a filmmaker. So he's got a thing coming out. I've talked about it on the show. So excited about it, called The Good Road. It's going to be amazing. Mm-hmm. I think public television's picking it up to kind of help launch them out of D.C. It's going to be awesome. Craig is Craig. Very different perspectives and opinions. We believe differently about some things, although that's less and less the case just because I just posted something today. I think opinions are overrated in general. I try not to have a whole lot of them. That's a sidebar. At any rate, so there's Craig. Then there's Jamie. Jamie is a homemaker. She lives in Cal City, and she's a quilt maker. She's got close friends, loves her family, spends time doing things, helping other people. She's just cool. There's
Wonderful.
Jamie.
That's so cool.
Then there's the oldest sister, Sabrina Jeffries. Her name is actually Debbie Gonzalez is her married name. Debbie, my sister I grew up with, is now Sabrina Jeffries because that's her pen name. She's a New York Times best-selling, steamy romance writer.
Fun.
She writes...
The ones with the covers with the guy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Ooh, love it. Pose. You could make the cover one day. I actually went with her to the Romantic Times convention, one of those things a while back, and somebody asked her, like, is he on the cover? This was a few years and a few pounds ago. At any rate, Debbie, New York Times bestseller, and she writes books like, a couple series ago was The Art of Sinning, makes our Southern Baptist missionary parents very, very proud. But the point being that we grew up in this family, but we have the individuality to be able to represent ourselves differently.
Right.
Companies make a huge mistake when they think, oh, well, you're a last name. This is us. And they don't encourage diversity of thought and opinion and of going out there. So I want you thinking about while you're watching this, listening to this, thinking about where you work, thinking about what you do. Do you have a strong first name company? There's a lot of emphasis there. Strong last name company? Or do you really have a company that gets it, that has the formula and that really allows for both?
Ooh, those are the best companies when you've got the, I'm going to do it from a marketing standpoint. You've got the brand and you've got the product, right?
Love it.
You know what I mean? So a lot of people confuse product with brand and think, ooh, I'm going to make my own Facebook page for this product that I have because I'm selling honey, but I'm really selling like sweeteners of all kinds, for example, right? So why would you have a page for each type of sweetener? You need just one for the brand and include the products, but each product adds something special to the brand. You know what I mean? And each product is important. It's individual. It has its own, unique taste and put out. And,
So when you force people at a company, though, into this box, you only think this way, do this thing, you limit all of the great stuff that can come when people are bringing their individuality.
True.
Google used to do the thing where you had 20% time to go investigate, do whatever you want to do. What was important to you? I like studying birds, or I want to take yoga, or I want to learn how to, I want to go study with this guru over in India.
But it's not just that. A lot of their innovations, a lot of the great things that came out of Google
50%.
Are
Over
pet
50%.
projects, right?
Yeah, they
Google
came out of
Maps
their
was
pet
a pet project. I'm sure, was it Earth? Google Earth was a pet project. Just somebody who wanted to play with it.
Somebody had a passion, and they gave them permission and encouraged them to go pursue it.
Right.
And it ended up in being a deal changer for the company. So I got a great story about that. Richard Montanez. Does anybody recognize that name? You may in a minute. Richard Montanez crossed the border from Mexico into California years ago with his family. He was a young boy at the time. When they came over, there was only kind of one sort of employment that was available to them, and that was to go pick grapes out in the fields. And so that's what they did. He said they would sit down every night. They would have, 6 families that would be sitting around a table, sharing stories, talking, and just sharing their experiences, and it was awesome. And so Richard Montanez just kind of grew up in this environment. He went to school, but at some point, he just couldn't cut it because his English wasn't good enough. He was kind of far behind, and so he dropped out of school at some point. And as he got older, he started looking for other jobs. He found a job at a car wash. One day, one of his buddies came in and said, hey, listen, Richard, the plant down the street, the Frito-Lay plant, is actually hiring you. You ought to go see if you can get a job. So Richard Montanez trucks off to Frito-Lay, walks in, applies, gets a job, blown away because this is like, with benefits and cool stuff. And he's like, man, this is awesome. Gets a job as a janitor at Frito-Lay. Richard Montanez would say, and he says there's absolutely no shame in this, and there isn't any shame in this, any kind of work, but his sole ambition was one day, if he could just rise to the place of this dream position he always would love and cherish to have, because it seemed like it'd be, a cool job and a lot easier. And that was to be the driver of the garbage truck.
Whoa.
So he's thinking, man, if I can get there, this is going to be the deal, right? This is it. So Richard Montanez worked there for a while, and the president of the company came over, loudspeaker. I don't know how they did it. Maybe it was a video. Maybe he was in there talking to everybody, town hall meeting. And he said these words, I want everybody at this company to act like an owner. Okay, well, I love that because obviously I wrote a whole book about that. Company of owners act like an owner. And but this, I am sure, predates that whole book. So Richard Montanez hears this. He kind of puffs up a little bit, and he's thinking, wow, that's really powerful. You're talking to me. You're talking to little Richard Montanez. Man, I came from Mexico. I don't even have a high school education. My English is pretty broken, but man, what do you mean? You want me to act like an owner? He looked around himself, by the way, and all of his coworkers were basically doing this. Come on, big corporate, bunch of nonsense. This kind of crap they say all the time, typical. Right? Yeah, typical. But he took it to heart. So one day, the Cheetos are coming down off the belt, and something has happened in the process, messed up, and there's no cheesy powder on the Cheetos. Now,
oh my goodness!
Don't put a bag of Cheetos in front of me late at night because I'm going to eat the whole bag. So Montanez sees these things coming off, and they don't have the zest, the stuff to them. So he before they can shut it down, he grabs some bags of them, takes them home, goes to, the kitchen, and starts pulling things off the shelf. So he starts investigating with them. There's a little lemon pepper, or there's some, chili powder, and he starts putting these different things on there and trying them out. He thinks, whoa, that's pretty good. He takes the bag, starts going around to his neighbors, and the neighbors are, dude, these are freaking amazing. Where can we get these? Can you make some for me? How do we get these? They're not really available yet. So he goes back to the company and has the audacity to call the president's office and gets the assistant and says, look, I'm Richard Montanez. I'm the janitor here, and I want to set up an appointment. So she goes, okay. So they set up an appointment with the president. Now, he gets somebody to help him, a little business plan. He has to go buy a tie because he's coming in for this high-level, very important meeting. He goes and pays $3 for a tie, probably a little, reuse store, whatever. He gets his tie. The day of the meeting, he doesn't know how to tie the tie, so his neighbor ties it for him. He goes in. He's done a little bit of packaging around it. He goes into the meeting with the president. They start sampling. They start testing, passing it around. And the long and short of it is that became one of the hottest selling products in the history of Frito-Lay. I mean, can you imagine that a guy goes from just, what's going on over there?
What? I have no idea, dude.
Flaming Hot. The whole Flaming Hot series. Now, I don't know if you've ever had Flaming Hot Cheetos, but those things are hot. They're actually really hot.
They're so good.
But this was because a company said to somebody, we want you to have a strong first name. We want you to act like an owner. We don't want you just to do what we tell you to do. We want you to come up with new stuff. Richard Montanez ultimately became an executive vice president with PepsiCo company. Here's a guy.
Those are hot.
He goes from they are hot. He goes from immigrant to executive vice president of one of the largest companies in America. Why? Because the company gave him permission to have a strong first name. That's what happens with first name.
Dang.
Pretty good stuff, right?
Really good. I had no idea. I had no idea how hot these were.
You can't eat any more of those. Okay, so strong first name, strong last name. That's what it looks like in a company that is really going to thrive. So evaluate. Do you have a strong first name? Do you have a strong last name? I actually got an email from a guy that I know who is a up-and-comer in a very dominant culture, in a very not dominant culture, but in a very dominant company. And I just saw one of those things posted on LinkedIn where, got a new job. And I said, hey, congratulations on your new job. And then he contacted me offline and said, hey, by the way, I want to tell you that I went and took this other job and I left that other company because of your books. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, your books, I read them all the time. I share them with my team. He said, I'm so frustrated by a company that doesn't get it, that's doing a lot of things wrong, and they're not, that's not listening. And I thought, man, what a shame, because they lost a rock star.
Wow.
Because
so
there
sad.
wasn't enough of a first name in that company to be able to stand up and say,
Really
hey,
good high praise for your book.
It is great praise, but my
it's great to see that it's having an impact.
yeah, my impact though. I mean,
I'm sad for the company that they
and that's my deal. That really the books are not intended to company owners, Beach Whale, the Sink. They're not intended to make people quit their jobs. Although if that's the outcome, that's the outcome. But they're intended for the company to show them a path forward to say, we're stuck. How do we get unstuck? What can we do?
Change the pattern so they don't have as much turnover. Change the pattern so that the outcomes are better, so they can increase their bottom line. It's just so much that we behind the book, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes companies just don't want to change.
They just don't want to change. So okay, we got to Martinize something. Then we got to roll.
Are
you ready?
I'm ready. Martinize.
Okay, so I want to talk about upselling and bait and switching. We had a phenomenal time a few weeks ago. I think we talked about it last show.
I want to switch out my mug for yours without telling you.
No. By the way, I keep putting my mug off camera, and I keep forgetting, wait, these are our mugs. There's, we can put this on camera. So at any rate, we were at the phenomenal, supposedly most haunted hotel, the Stanley Hotel. And so we're at the bar, and of course, I want to do what you're supposed to do when you're at the bar at the Stanley Hotel, and you're supposed to drink what the guy from The Shining, what Stephen King drank, and what the Jack Nicholson. I always get him and the golfer mixed up.
Wait, what is it that you're supposed to drink?
You're supposed to drink Jack. Okay, straight up.
Straight.
Jack on the rocks, just straight up.
Wait,
they have this
straight
thing.
up is on the rocks and straight up. Are they the same thing?
Yes, neat.
But straight up, doesn't that mean like straight?
No,
without anything?
Straight up means no soda, nothing in it. At least my understanding is.
Shows you how much I know about drinking.
Would be without ice. Okay, talking to a professional.
Oh.
So at any rate, I wanted that. Last time I was there, I remember, and I said, well, what do people get? They said, well, we have red rum punch, and I'm like, and they said, yeah, it's kind of touristy, no. And I said, well, what did he drink in the movie? He's like, Jack. Okay, so I ordered Jack, and the server that wasn't even our server kind of chimes in and says, hey, that's great, but you really, a lot of people haven't tried this, but there's this Jack that is, so good. I mean, it's just butter, melts in your mouth. It's phenomenal. It's called Sinatra. I like the name.
Ooh.
Big Blue Eyes fan, right? So she goes, this Sinatra, you ought to try it. And I'm like, well, maybe just regular Jack. She's like, okay, I'm just telling you, you're missing out. I'm like, okay, so let me try the Sinatra. So you're in trouble when they bring the bottle over, right?
But it was a pretty bottle.
It was a pretty bottle. It was the end of the bottle. I was like, I may keep the bottle or whatever. We get our bill later. Guess, I don't know why I'm asking you to guess, because I raved about it for about 7 days. Guess how much, Ziggy, that shot, or not shot, but one glass of that Jack Sinatra was?
So like what, 2 fingers?
Yes.
$120.
No. Whew, boy, if it had been $120, I would have burned the place down.
Oh, no.
It was.
Darren.
Okay.
No, we would never burn any place down.
So I'm just kidding.
Just like,
Proverbially. So at any rate,
hypothetically,
it was $50 for one little glass of this stuff. And I was because I'm looking at the overall bill, and it shouldn't have been that high. And I'm like, how did our bill get to be this big? And it turned out that, it just sort of slid it in there. And I've had this happen to me one time before when I let the bartender pick the wine, and you come back later. This was years ago, and they gave me the 2 most expensive glasses of wine you could buy, like $25 a pop or something. I'm going, really?
maybe she just meant it she seemed like she just really liked that what was it, whiskey?
She did really like it, but that's not the
Jack.
point. The point is, when you're going to upsell somebody, let them
sometimes
know.
even if it's well intended, without upselling, right?
Let them know what's happening.
Yeah.
So all she had to say is, hey, by the way, a regular Jack's great. That's awesome. Happy to give that to you. I got this Sinatra. Now I'm going to warn you, it's a little pricey. It's about $50. But I'm telling you, this thing is going to change your life. This is going to be great. I'll give you a little teeny sip if you'd like, and see if you want. Then now the consumer's going in and is educated and knows what they're doing. It's like when they come around at a restaurant. servers come around and they say, "Oh yes, for our special for the day, we have a full rack of hippopotamus that nobody eats hippopotamus. I don't think so. Anyway, we have a we have a bone-in ribeye, whatever it is, and that's our special, and that comes with a side of this and a side of that. Boom, and then they shut up, and you're going, and especially if you're on a date, it's the worst. Okay, because you're sitting there going, you hate to ask. I'm done with that. I'm just asking from now on. How much is that? The consumer has a right to know. So if they don't mention it, but all that person has to say is, I'm going to let you know this is the most expensive thing on the menu. That special tonight is $1.25. But I'm going to tell you, the last 4 people that ordered it said it was the best steak they've ever had. Okay, now you're informing people. But it drives me nuts when people upsell you something. Oh, yeah, well, let me put these other tires on instead. And then you just find out that they just did a number on you. Not
honestly,
fair, not cool.
The way it goes is if you hide information from someone, you have removed their right to choose.
Yes.
Right? Because I don't have a choice anymore because I wasn't informed that there were 3 options or what it costs or whatever. So basically, they took away your right to choose if you wanted it or not, because they didn't tell you how much it was. And you had that right to choose, which is not theirs to take, right?
Totally suckered them into it, is what I feel like. And it's such a simple thing to just inform people what they're actually getting, what they're actually buying. So that's my Martinized. Don't do that if you're a server. Don't do that. But it's not just in the server world. It's not just in the restaurant and the bar arena. It's also when you're out selling services, you're selling projects, you're selling things.
It's also online. You won't believe what happens next. Click here.
Oh, those things.
You won't believe what was growing on her back. Yeah. Click here.
I'm so done with those
things. And then
things.
you click, and then you go to an ad, and that takes you to a thing that takes you to another thing, and you're like, I want to get out of here. I just wanted to see what was growing on her back.
Way overpromise and underdeliver.
Yep.
So,
don't overpromise. Don't underdeliver.
Tell people what it is.
Tell them
Let
what
them,
it is.
an informed consumer is the best consumer, and you ought to be able to sell it on the merit of whatever it is you're selling.
Happy customer creates more happy customers.
And they tell other people,
and
it's just beautiful. Okay, so that's it for episode number 6. That was not very confident. Okay, so we have a big ask.
5 last week, so we're 6.
We have a big ask. We are almost to that little magical number. We need 3 more where YouTube all of a sudden says, oh, whoa, you guys are a real deal. You're a real show. And they kind of punch it over. So we may already have the subscribers now, but please go subscribe on the show. We'd love for you to.
We always want more subscribers.
We want all the subscribers we can get. And all that means is you're not committing to anything. It just means that when the show comes up, you'll get a notification maybe saying, hey, by the way, if you want to watch this.
And you can subscribe and turn off your notifications.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yep.
But we love having you tune in with us. Also, subscribe on iTunes. Fill us in a little review if you like the show. Give us 5 stars. Give us a little. If you don't like the show, let us know about it. We want to hear what you're thinking.
Rate us.
We had somebody recently. I loved a post that disagreed with something we said on the show. I was like, brilliant!
Yes,
wow, this is gold. We don't want to.
Love hearing your opinions.
Yeah, we
want
to know
thoughts,
show topics, all that stuff.
We're individuals.
Yeah.
But we're also Martins, and you're individuals, and we want to hear about you because I think everybody who joins in company culture with Daren Martin is a member of company culture.
Way to tie it in with the theme of today's show.
I know. Just came to my brain.
You're so brilliant at that. But yeah, if you would, go check that out. And by the way, I think I may not have mentioned this, but we just got word. It was in the making, but we just got the contract. All 4 books, Company of Owners, Beach Whale, Whiteboard, The Sink, are all going to be published in Kenya and East Africa. How cool is that?
I think we should celebrate.
So we're stoked about that, and then the rest of the world. So thank you guys for chiming in. We will see you on the next episode of Company Culture with Daren Martin. And
see ya.
No, your name.
Elise. Me. Martin. Woo.